You've just watched a driver nail a perfect lap in qualifying, quickest on the grid, looking untouchable. But here's the question nobody asks. What if that fastest car is actually slower than the one starting fifth? Qualifying isn't one race, it's three completely different puzzles. And the setup that wins you pole position might sabotage you when the lights go out on Sunday. This is how teams weaponize fuel loads and tire strategy to hide their true pace until it matters most. In Formula One, pole position is a prize worth fighting for, but it's a false god if it costs you the race. A driver on low fuel and fresh soft tires can squeeze out a tenth or two that vanishes the moment fuel loads climb on Sunday morning. Teams exploit this ruthlessly. They qualify light, celebrate on the grid, then reveal their true performance envelope when it actually counts. The driver who qualifies fifth might be running race-distance setups, testing tire degradation patterns, and carrying fuel loads closer to Sunday's reality. By lap 20, when the low-fuel specialists start managing their cars and the fuel loads become identical, the actual pecking order flips. That's not luck, that's strategy. And understanding this three-act structure separates the teams that win championships from the ones chasing shadows on Saturday. Let's break down exactly why a car that's untouchable on Saturday can look vulnerable by lap 30 on Sunday. And it comes down to something almost invisible: fuel. Imagine a Formula One car as a tightrope walker carrying a heavy backpack. The lighter the load, the easier the balance, the faster the walk. On Friday and Saturday morning, teams are essentially removing that backpack piece by piece. In Q1 and Q2, drivers still carry significant fuel, maybe 70–80% of their race load. The car sits higher on its suspension, the tires warm differently, and the aerodynamic platform is stiffer because there's more weight pressing down through the chassis. But in Q3, for a single 3-lap run, a driver might have just enough fuel for 4, maybe 5 flying laps total. That's typically 15 to 20 kilograms less than they'll carry on Sunday. The car immediately feels lighter, sharper, almost like a different machine. Lower fuel weight means the suspension compresses less. The ride height changes and airflow patterns shift around the whole car. Those tiny gaps between wing elements that create downforce, they react differently when there's less weight pressing down. The tire is also fresher and warmer after the out lap, so it's gripping like glue. Here's the crucial part. Engineers dial in their Q3 setup assuming that light fuel condition. They add wing angle for single lap pace, adjust brake bias for quick stops, tweak suspension stiffness for that specific weight. Every setting is optimized for a car that weighs what it weighs at that exact moment. Roll into Sunday with a full tank. Suddenly, that setup is working against you. The car sits lower, braking distances lengthen because the extra mass is pushing forward, and the wings you trimmed for light fuel speed are now generating turbulence instead of clean flow. Your tire temperatures spike because there's more weight grinding through the corners. That's why you'll see drivers complain their car feels undrivable or unbalanced in the opening laps of the race. It's not magic, it's physics. The setup is screaming at one weight and the car is delivering another. To understand how extreme this gap becomes, look at Monaco 2016. Lewis Hamilton took pole position, and it was a masterclass in extracting single-lap pace from a lighter, sharper car. His setup was a knife edge. Minimal fuel, aggressive wing angles, and suspension geometry tuned for those exact conditions on the narrow Monegasque streets. Race day arrived, and Hamilton was fastest on the straights, but genuinely struggled for grip in the slow corners during the opening stint, the very places where Monaco is decided. His engineers had to adjust brake bias and suspension compliance over several laps as the fuel burned off and the car slowly transformed back into the machine they'd actually qualified with. That's a relatively straightforward example, but jump ahead to Suzuka 2015. Sebastian Vettel's Ferrari took an unexpected pole in the rain, and his entire setup was optimized for aquaplaning avoidance and wet weather feel. When Sunday's race dried out and fuel loads normalized, The car's balance shifted so dramatically that Ferrari had to fight understeer all afternoon. A setup built for one condition collapsed into another. Vettel finished fourth. A driver with a machine built for Sunday's actual conditions would likely have had the pace to fight further up. Both examples reveal the same truth. The car that looks fastest on Saturday might be the worst compromise for Sunday, and teams have to make that gamble knowing exactly what it costs them. Now here's the thought experiment that keeps engineers awake. Imagine you could run qualifying with the exact fuel load and tire age you'll carry into lap 1 of the race. No fresh rubber, no light tank, just reality. In most eras and most circuits, that hypothetical car would qualify somewhere in the midfield, maybe lower. The pole position that just earned you the grid's best view, gone. That's not a weakness in the system. It's the fundamental gamble that Formula One has chosen to live with. Because the alternative, a qualifying that mirrors race conditions, would erase the drama, the precision, and the singular beauty of seeing a driver extract the absolute limit from a car in solitude, one lap, everything on edge. But it also means the driver leading into turn 1 on Sunday is carrying a setup that was never designed to win a 2-hour-long fight. So let's lock in the 3 ideas that matter. Qualifying and racing are 2 different sports, fought with 2 different cars on 2 different fuel loads. Second, that gap between pole and race pace setup isn't a bug. It's the price of having the most dramatic, most pure test of a driver's skill that motorsport can create. And third, that's exactly why the grid's fastest man into turn 1 often isn't the strongest for the final lap. So tell us, which qualifying surprise has burned you hardest? A massive Q3 demolition followed by a race collapse, or a dark horse strategy that paid off when the lights went out? Subscribe and drop it in the comments, because next time we're hunting the moments when one lap doesn't matter at all.